So, right.
Terrific. Thank you, Mina. It looks like everyone has joined us from the waiting room. We know we'll have some more people joining us. So thank you for being here with us for our second webinar in this series on MLRC School Improvement. If you weren't with us last week, my name is Esther Bettany-Height, and I'm here with many of my MLRC colleagues and also our co-facilitator, Jake Huckle, and we'll introduce ourselves in a minute. But we just wanted to start by asking you to introduce yourself in the chat, and we still have more people joining us. So as you're coming in, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, if you can just share with us your school or organization that you represent and where you're joining us from. And thank you. We have some people already joining us in the chat, Thailand, Switzerland, lots of places. So you can just put in the chat where you're joining us from.
Wonderful to see again the global community of international educators and folks across the MLRC network. Appreciate those of you in Asia in particular staying up late to join us. Really grateful for your commitment.
Terrific. All right. Well, we will continue to have people join us. We can see more people are coming in from the waiting room. But thank you again for being here with us today. We know some of you were also with us last week for our first installment of this webinar series. But for today, we're going to again be focused on introducing the MLRC School Network. We're going to talk about how we support schools, specifically today through the MLRC School Improvement Playbook. We're going to be thinking about how the playbook can help you in terms of thinking about the impact of your work and also how you can be involved, whether you are a school network member or not yet a member. We'd love to find ways for you to be involved in this global community. As I said, my name is Esther Bettany-Height, and I am a researcher with the MLRC School Network, and I will let my co-facilitators today introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. I'm John Nordmeyer. I'm the School Network Director and really excited to be joining in partnership with our third co-facilitator today, Jake.
Hi everyone, great to be here today. My name's Jacob Huckle and I'm currently head of multilingual learning at Dulwich College, Suzhou in China. And I've worked together with Esther and John and the MLRC to create the playbook of tools that we're going to be introducing you to in today's session.
Great, thank you. And if you're just joining us, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Again, we're really happy for you to be with us today. And many of you were with us last week and many of you are new. So we're going to start with a bit of an introduction about the MLRC. So I will turn that over to John.
Thanks. And again, I know many of you are from MLRC member schools. We're going to just briefly reintroduce the MLRC, but we also welcome folks. We see a number of you who are not yet members of the MLRC School Network. So we are a research center that's based at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. The university is proud to share that they were just ranked #1 again and for schools of education. Our center focuses on improving outcomes for multilingual learners, and we do that by collaborating with scholars and schools in a variety of ways with a focus on equity and innovation. What do we know about teaching multilingual learners from the research, and what can we discover together as we transform schools? And again, I mentioned many of you are from member schools. We serve 150 schools in 60 countries through a global research practice partnership called the MLRC School Network. And there are 4 main ways we support schools: through access, improvement, action, and insights. I'm going to really briefly introduce those. Then we're going to talk mostly about improvement. That's the focus of today's webinar. The reason we have created the MLRC as a research practice partnership is we know that engaging with research and connecting research to practice is a good idea, but it doesn't always happen. And in this recent study, found that only a third of teachers and leaders use research because it's either not accessible, not relevant, or it feels disconnected to classroom. So we're really trying to address that research to practice gap. And so, as I mentioned, four main approaches. We provide access to research-based tools, cutting-edge relevant research in international schools that you should know that informs policy and practice. The improvement to help you understand what are some best practices, to apply them, and to provide you with some tools to really evaluate, to take a look at how you assess what's happening at your school, both to identify assets and targets for improvement. And that's what we're focused on today. We also, as many of you know, we have action research stars joining us from around the world. Many of you have joined us at research symposium events to engage a team in doing action research at your school. And then we have a number of studies that we share insights. For example, Esther's been doing a lot of work with AI and translanguaging and sharing that back with the community. So our focus today is really on improvement. And that centers around the School Improvement Framework that we've developed at the MLRC. This is, you can see, 4 levels, starting with the student at the center, looking at the classroom level, program level, and school level. And this provides you with indicators of quality. Last week, we introduced the framework. So we're going to really quickly go through these, this introduction. But if you want to learn more about the framework and you're not familiar with it, please take a look at the recording from last week's webinar. We know many of you were there. Again, it is created by researchers that we collaborated with around the world, and it was reviewed by international experts, folks like you, leaders, teachers in international schools. So it's really grounded in both research and practices, what good looks like in international schools today, serving multilingual learners. And importantly, it complements the existing strategic planning and accreditation processes that you're already engaged in for continuous improvement. We've organized the framework around those 4 levels. Each of the levels is divided into sub-themes, and those themes are connected to indicators, and those indicators also specify the research connections. So again, last week's webinar went into a lot of detail about how the framework is organized and the associated components. Today's focus is going to be on how do you use the framework? How do you leverage some of those tools? And again, we mentioned the connections with accreditation. Those of you who are WASC schools know that the recently revised Focus on Learning guidelines have incorporated the MLRC School Improvement Framework into the WASC framework. And we're also working closely with NEASC and Cognia, because those accreditation agencies want schools to do action research. And so we have tools, processes, technology to help you do that. The framework has associated self-study tools, and that's the focus of today's webinar. We're really excited to have Jake co-facilitating, because Jake helped co-develop and co-design many of these tools. There's a playbook, which is a collection of these activities, and within that, 2 of the tools we'll talk about are the inventory and then the handbook templates. That's if you want to use these tools for your own self-study, and we want to make them available to all member schools for you to use them in the way that makes the most sense to you. We also offer partnership reviews. So you can partner with the MLRC for an on-site comprehensive review or for an online guided review. And we're happy to share more information about how we do that. Sometimes it's really helpful having a thought partner walking alongside as you evaluate your work at your school. So that's a really brief introduction. Jake is going to now share more about the playbook, where you can find it and how you can use it.
Okay, thanks very much. So, as John said, one of the ways that you can engage with the MLRC School Improvement Framework is through this DIY self-study approach, in which you, in your school, would use this framework to help you evaluate your school, reflect on your school's progress against these indicators that have been briefly introduced and were introduced in more detail in last week's webinar, and to support you in doing that work as a school community, we've created this playbook of tools and activities. And I'm going to introduce that playbook today and give you a taste of what some of those activities involve. And hopefully you'll see how you can use this in your school to drive improvement around multilingual learning. If you are a school member and you go to the school network hub, you can find the playbook in this section here. If you go to school improvement, you'll see there's a section called playbook, and in that on that tab, that's where all of the schools who are members of the school network will be able to access the tools that I'm going to introduce today. So all of the tools we're going to talk about are there already available for you to use. There's some associated PDFs and templates that you can download and use in various ways within your school. And when you open that playbook, you'll notice that you've got here a collection of tools. And in the diagram, you can see there are actually 17 tools divided up into 4 sections, which I'll talk about in a moment. And you'll also see this introduction in the blue box here, which is taken from the website. And as it says here, this is a collection of tools, activities, and protocols that schools can use independently for their reflection, evaluation, and improvement. So you may decide as a school community that there's a team of you, or even as an individual, you want to, or as a whole school, as well, you want to have a reflection and evaluation about what's going on and find the areas that you want to improve based on this research-backed and research-based framework. And then you could go to this playbook and choose the tools that you want to use to help you in that process. The tools, as I said, are divided into 4 parts. Step 1, familiarize. Step 2, inventory. Step 3, deep dive. Step 4, action plan. And there's at least 3 activities in each of those sections. Section 3 has more than that. So we're going to go through each of those 4 sections one by one. I'm going to briefly introduce the purpose of that section of the playbook and then give you a taste of 1 or 2 of the tools that are available there. And then after each section, we'll pause for any questions or reflections that you might like to share. So should we start with the first part of the framework, which is called Familiarize? So the purpose of this part really is for you and the others in your school who are engaging in this framework to become more familiar with the framework. That includes the research underpinning the framework. It includes the terminology that's used within the framework. And what we hope through using these familiarized tools is that the school community will build a shared understanding of what effective provision for multilingual learners looks like. Once you've built that shared understanding within your school community, you're ready to engage in the more detailed reflection using these tools. And you can see there are 3 tools there. We've got a Research Connections Jigsaw activity, we've got the KWL chart, and then the key terms traffic lights. If you joined our last week's webinar, actually you engaged in one of these activities, a short version of one of these activities called the Research Connections Jigsaw. So in last week's webinar, we shared the Research Connections document, which is a summary of the research that's underpinning each section of the framework. And you read it individually, and then we discussed what were the connections you could make, what were the key points that came out from the research to you. And this is a similar activity that you could do in your schools. And as you can see, just as an overview of what it looks like, each of the activities has a kind of plan like this, which gives an overview. It talks about the goal of the activity, and then you've got any associated documents that you might be able to download. And then we've taken you through to suggest how the format in which you could run this activity, who might be the participants, and then an outline step by step of how you might run this. Now, remember, these tools are here to help you. So you may use them in a different way. You may adapt them, edit them in a way that works well for your school community, or maybe approach them in a different way than the one we've suggested here. And that's encouraged for you to do so. So that's what an activity in the playbook looks like. And I wanted to just give you a taste of one of these so you can see the value of this kind of activity. So one tool that we're offering in this section is called the key term traffic lights. And the overview here, it says here, participants will reflect on some of the key terms used within the MLRC School Improvement Framework, considering how well they know what the terms mean. So in the framework, as we know, it's research-based, so there is some terminology that the users of the framework would need to become familiar with, and we want to make sure that everyone in your school has a shared understanding of those terms. So you'll see there's a plan like this. We're going to do just a taste of this. We're not going to do the whole activity, but I thought we'd do an interactive activity together. So we're going to use the Mentimeter online tool, and I'm going to share with you the QR code here. So on the screen, you can see the QR code. You can either scan the QR code or you can go to menti.com and type in the number 14934435. When you go to that link, you're going to see these list of key terms. Can you just rate them 1, 2, or 3 on a kind of traffic light system? So 1 is red. That means you're not familiar with this term. Then let's say 2 is orange. You have some familiarity with the term. Maybe you've heard about it before. You could guess what it means, but you're not really that clear about it. And green means you're very clear about what this word means. So we just pause for a few seconds while you do that. If you were doing this activity in your school, you probably wouldn't be doing it in an online format like this, but as I'll share with you in a minute, we have some cards that you could use as a sorting activity, or you could engage with it in another way in your school. I think I'm just going to wait 10 more seconds. Okay, let's have a look at some of the responses. Okay, so we can see here's the average ratings. So remember, 3 means a high level of familiarity with the term. So some terms here used within the framework, language proficiency, we can see is quite highly rated. Translanguaging, that's encouraging to see. Scaffolding. Other words maybe a bit less familiar among our group here, linguistic landscapes on 2.1, metalinguistic awareness on 2.3, learning exceptionalities on 2.3. So you can see here how this might be a useful activity to do in your school, to go through these terms. And then when you found in your school community that there's one term that maybe many people were not familiar with, that would be a good opportunity for you to engage in some inquiry, use the resources that are available to you through the MLRC School Network Hub or other resources to build that shared understanding so that everyone's on the same page about what these terms mean and what the indicators are looking for in a school. And you can leave that Mentimeter open because we're going to come back and have another activity a bit later. I'm just going to go back to my slides now. So that was just a brief taste of what that activity could be like. And if you were doing this in your school, you would be able to download this document from the MLRC Hub, which has the key terms there and has many more than those that we just listed. And these are all terms that are used within the framework. And you could use this as a handout for teachers to take away, and we suggest in the playbook they might highlight using the 3 colors to traffic light and then come together as a group to discuss those terms. You may cut them up into cards and have the teachers work in groups to sort the key terms into those red, amber, and green groups, or any other way that you would like to use to engage with these key terms. And again, this is just one of those 3 activities available in that familiarize stage, and I hope you can see that the purpose and value of that is to build that shared understanding before you jump into actually engaging in the evaluation of your school using the framework. So that's a brief introduction to the first section. Step 1, familiarize, and I've just given you a brief taste of one of the activities from that called the key terms traffic light. And I'd like to pause there for any reflection, and I'm going to hand over to Esther to share any thoughts or to collect any thoughts from other people in the audience.
Terrific. Thank you, Jake. Thanks for giving us a glimpse of some of the activities that are available within step 1. And we already have some great thoughts and connections in the chat. So we'll just encourage you. We know some people are already using the playbook activities. So if you want to either share in the chat or unmute yourself and share, We also know as you're starting to be introduced to the playbook, you might have some questions about what is the playbook, how it fits kind of within a larger scope. So I want to answer one question that came up in the chat because other people might be thinking the same thing. So a question came from Arthur in the chat, just wondering about if the playbook is related to our ML's 101 course. So just to clarify, these are two different resources that are available. Both have been very recently added to the hub. So there could be some possibility of confusion there. But just to clarify the difference, the ML's 101 course is a self-paced asynchronous course that's available for all members so that they have the opportunity to further develop their capacity to work with multilingual learners. So anyone in a school who's working with multilingual learners, the ML's 101 course is designed for you. So that's a standalone course. The playbook is located within the hub in our school improvement section. And school improvement is thinking about what are some of the tools that we can provide you with to engage in inquiry and reflection about how your entire school is serving multilingual learners. So there's going to be lots of connections you can make between ML's 101 and school improvement, but the ML's 101 course is particularly focused on classroom practices, and the playbook looks much more general or much more broadly, I will say, across the entire framework, which includes classroom practices, but it also looks at the school, program, classroom, and student level. So two different tools that are available for members, different purposes, but both serving the same larger purpose of supporting you in developing capacity to serve your multilingual learners. Arthur, I see you have your hand up.
First of all, thanks, John and Esther, for addressing the question. Since both of these tools are relatively new additions to the site, and we're actually a new members school just starting off our journey, would you have any advice or guidance in terms of sequencing these two? Because in terms of familiarity, what Jacob just discussed, there's going to be overlap. So any strategic advice you might have would be appreciated.
Terrific. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it's a great question, Arthur. Really appreciate it. I think, again, since they're two sort of separate purposes, it really depends on your audience. And again, we're really excited for you to join us as a new school. I would say the Coalition of the Willing, the content teachers who are interested in learning more about teaching multilingual learners, engaging them in the ML's 101 course, and then your core team of EAL folks, teacher leaders, and ideally some representatives from your administration working with the playbook activities to begin to self-evaluate. So more teachers who are interested in teaching multilingual learners, engaging with the ML's 101 course with your coaching and guidance, and then a core team of folks who want to think about school improvement, engaging with the playbook. So I'd think about those two different audiences and to work in tandem.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Arthur. Other questions about the playbook as we're introducing it, or this first step one, or maybe a way that you've engaged with it? Martin, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. We would like to start using this playbook in my school. However, one of the questions that came up when you presented this traffic light activity is that maybe linguists or language teachers may be familiar with these terms and they are able to place them based on the knowledge of the terms. However, I'm thinking of coworkers who may think they know and may place it like not accurately. So I was checking the playbook and there's no activity that follows up on providing definitions for these terms. What is the way that you suggest this would go?
Terrific. Great question. Thank you, Martin. And we want to just reiterate that the playbook is designed so that it can be adapted to your particular context. So depending on, your audience and such, you might decide, okay, we're not going to use all of these terms for kind of the first round. We want to ensure that we start with a smaller set of terms and develop some real basic understanding and shared understanding around those terms. We also know as educators and professionals that sometimes it can be vulnerable to say, oh, I don't know what that term means if we feel like others are experts. So we really want to encourage you to adapt the any of the activities that we talk about today to your particular context. It's really interesting that you mentioned about the definitions. So Jake here is also a member of our MLRC Language Policy Working Group. And within that group, we have actually started developing together a glossary of terms, because we realized as people are refining their language policies, there's a lot of debate of, well, what do we actually mean by that? And what does that mean in this context? So as a group, we are developing the terms. And actually, we started with this list of terms from the playbook and said, okay, let's start by defining those terms. And then we looked specifically at language policy if there were any additional terms that we needed to add. And so we're still co-developing that as a language policy working group. Anyone here that's a member of MLRC School is welcome to join the language policy group. Feel free just to let us know in the chat and we'll send you the information. But as soon as we have finished co-developing that, that will be added to the playbook as an appendix. So as you can see, the playbook continues to be developed with our members, but thank you. It's a terrific question and something we've realized we want to add to the playbook.
Thanks, Esther and Martin. And I know we want to provide, we're going to jump back to have Jake share a little bit more about the other sections, but I just want to emphasize that, Martin, your question is excellent, and we will continue to add to the playbook with all the great alternative activities and additions we get from the MLRC community. So we're looking forward to you helping to contribute to the playbook where you see opportunities as well.
Okay, thanks very much for those questions. I think as well, on the point about the key terms, what's really important is to build that understanding, that shared understanding of what those terms mean in your school community. So how is that a term like translanguaging? What does that mean for your school, and how's that understood, and what makes sense about how you're going to use that term within your school community? So even once that glossary is there, it's still important to build that shared understanding about what it means in the context of your school and the language profiles of your school community as well. So shall we talk about stage 2? Step 2 is the inventory section. And this is the time when you're doing the inventory, when you would go to those indicators and then you would use those indicators as a tool to audit, evaluate, or reflect on what's going well in your school, and then start to identify some areas for development or improvement. So we've got 3 different ways that we are suggesting you could engage with the inventory itself. And the inventory tool looks something like this. Here's just a section that you can see. And as you can see here, it's linked to the framework. So it was, as was introduced earlier and last week in more detail, and you can see the recording of that if you want to learn a bit more. There are 4 levels: a school level, program level, classroom, and student. And then for each of those levels, we've got the indicators. And what we've done with the inventory tool is we've got a template here that you can use and rate how well you think your school's doing on each of the indicators, write a reflection, and then gather some evidence to support that. And this, remember, it's just a tool for your improvement, so you can use this in various ways, but you might decide to keep this as a document that you review every year, for example, or on a 3-year cycle, or whatever cycle you choose to use within your school as an improvement tool alongside the other protocols that you're using. And how might you engage with this inventory document, with this tool? We're suggesting 3 different ways of engagement. The first one, which we're calling the team inventory, would be you would form some teams. For example, you might make those teams around those 4 levels. There might be one team of teachers in your school or other members of your community who are working on the school level, for example, others who are going to focus on the classroom level, others who are going to focus on the student level, etc. So you've got those 4 groups, Or if you're in a larger group, you could have subgroups, etc. And then they would go away, gather that evidence, reflect on their sections, and then come together as a group and compile them together. Some of you who've gone through accreditation processes or other school evaluation process may be familiar with this kind of team-based working. We've also got what we're calling the snowball inventory approach. Again, it's the same framework, but for this one, you may send that document to the individuals who would go through and rate those indicators from their own perspective. Then they would compare their ratings and evaluations in pairs and then in small groups, etc. So you're gathering those different perspectives as you go. Or another way you might choose to engage is with the inventory is through a whole school survey or staff survey. So we've actually created a Google Forms version of the form so that then you can duplicate that and send that out to your the members who are involved in your team or everyone in your school, and they can go through and rate how they think your school's doing, and then you can compile those and look for the averages. And any of these three ways that you choose to engage with that inventory tool, let me go back to that one. Any of those three ways are going to help you to identify these are the indicators that we think are going really well and are well developed in our school. These are the ones we haven't started yet or that we've only just started, so we want to focus on making some more improvement in those areas. So that's step two, the inventory, where you've got that document, and then we're suggesting three ways that you could engage with that inventory as a school team. But there are other ways, of course, that you might choose to engage with that inventory tool in different ways, or just to focus on certain sections of it. So shall we pause there, and I'll hand over to John for any thoughts or reflections about that.
Thanks, Jake. Again, we'd love to hear your questions in the chat or your observations. And I just want to reiterate, the inventory is a really powerful tool. It's sort of a lens through which you can view your school. And so we're not being prescriptive to say, here's what it should look like, or here's how you should use it. We want to make it really as flexible and adaptable for you to use this tool in a number of different ways. So would love to hear, looks like Regina, thank you. And the Google form, yes, is intended to facilitate collaboration. And you'll note that it requires you to make a copy. So then it is private for your school to share with everyone. And Raphael, thank you for recognizing that every context is different. And so we need to contextualize the work. We want to have a powerful research-based tool and a common set of indicators, but we want to allow you or encourage you to really adapt that. And the evidence collection that you also mentioned, Raphael, we encourage schools to link into the inventory your documents at your school. So if you have a language policy, make sure you put that in the evidence column or other self-study that you have. Thank you, Sintanya. Wonderful to see you. To think about how you've used it at your school as part of a partner review, and to be able to use it going forward to continue to guide continuous improvement. And Rachel, yes, obviously to think about the champions in your school, it gives you both evidence, but also a particular focus, a compass point for the biliteracy champions. And again, really grateful for your partnership with the MLRC. And maybe a last comment from Gordon. The collaborative tools, and this goes back to the question that was asked earlier about different stakeholder groups and interest holder groups. I would encourage you to think carefully about how you scaffold the engagement with this tool. And so, as Jake mentioned, building understanding through a reading jigsaw to understand the research and to engage a team is a really critical first step before we ask people to use the inventory, because they may feel unprepared, they may be unfamiliar with some of the terms. So would absolutely include homeroom teachers, but build the scaffolding for them to understand the framework, to understand the concepts, understand the research before we ask them to use the framework to make some judgments and to do that collaboratively as part of a process. So thank you. You can see how powerful the inventory is. Again, we didn't want to just say, here's an inventory, go use it. We wanted to wrap that in some suggested scaffolding, and that's the purpose of the playbook. So these questions are all really, really helpful as you're reflecting on how to use these tools. I'll pass it off to Jake to think about what step 3 looks like.
Great, thank you. I think what's coming through in the comments and the questions is how these are a flexible set of tools that you can choose to engage with some parts, not with others, adapt them, modify them. These are here to support you and how you want to engage with the framework in different ways. So let's talk about the third of the 4 steps, which is the what we're calling the deep dive. And this is a stage that you may choose not to use. You may feel that you have enough evidence from the inventory that you have a clear understanding of what you need to work on. But what we're thinking with the deep dive section is maybe there's an area that you want to know a bit more about, an area of the framework where you feel you're not clear, like maybe it's the classroom practice. You're not really clear what kind of strategies or how well language is being scaffolded within a classrooms, whether language objectives are being used, how frequently translanguaging is being used in classrooms, etc. So then you might choose to use one of these activities to find out more about those specific areas. So for example, you might choose activity 3A, the ML student shadowing activity. In this one, we've got a template that you can use linked to the framework indicators, and you may follow a student around for a day or half a day or period of time and use that template to record your observations related to the indicators within the framework, or you may use the lesson observation template we have there in order to observe lessons through the lens of the framework, and that would help you gather more evidence around what's going on in terms of the classroom practice linked to the classroom level of the framework. And as you can see here, we have quite a lot of different activities. This is the largest group of activities because they're focusing on different parts, some of them on policy, some of them on staffing, etc. So one that I'm going to introduce briefly now is activity 3C, the Linguistic Landscape Learning Walk. And in this activity, the participants, the teachers or the leaders, whoever's taking part in this activity, is going to walk around the school. And this could be as individuals or as a group. And they're going to, as they walk around the school, they're going to look for the evidence of multilingualism in the school environment. And they're going to use that learning walk as an opportunity to reflect on the role of multilingualism on a school level, rather than just a classroom level, and identify areas of strength and areas for improvement. And we have a document there that you can download that's going to tell you through that. And we've got the step-by-step instructions, which if you want to engage in this, you could look at later. So we're going to just, let me jump forward to this slide. So here you can see how this document that's available to you, this is the template on the right side of the screen, or a section of it. And you can see on the left side of the screen, I've put here the indicators. So can you see how it's clearly aligned to the indicators? For example, we have some descriptors here, 1.11 and 1.12, about language policy and language policy implementation. And then as you're going on the linguistic landscape learning walk, we have some guiding questions. What evidence do you see of a language policy being effectively or ineffectively implemented? What behaviors do you notice as you're going on this language learning walk that align with or go against the language policy? So then we have some questions about dispositions, about multilinguals, etc., school-wide events. So here you can see the alignment between the framework and the improvement tools. So we don't have the PDF to share right now in the chat, but can you just have a look at the screen and you can see that. I hope it's big enough for you to see that document. And I thought it would be interesting just to briefly pause and imagine you're doing this walk. Obviously, we don't want you to leave your screen and go on a walk around your school now, especially if it's late in the evening. So just imagine you're walking around the school and maybe choose some of those kind of questions and maybe share some reflections briefly in the chat, maybe just a few words or phrases or sentences that come out. You can think about the linguistic landscape, maybe the first question. What evidence do you see of the school's environment reflecting or not reflecting the multilingual nature of students, families, and communities? Which languages and cultures are represented or not represented as you walk around your school? When I did this in my school, for example, I walk around and I notice, in the displays, in the posters, in the signage in the school. My school's based in China. I see English everywhere. I see Chinese in the school displays and things around the school campus. And I see some Korean, that's our kind of third largest language, but I don't see much of the other languages. So that tells me there's an opportunity for improvement there to find more representation of the other languages that maybe don't have so many students using them or not officially part of the school curriculum. How can we provide more visibility for those languages? And that was something that came through to me from doing this kind of learning walk. So have a look at those questions. Imagine you're walking around your school. Do you have any thoughts to share in the chat about that? Thanks, John, for clarifying that. So just reflect on those questions for a few seconds, and maybe you just personally reflect and think on those. And imagine if you were walking around the school with a group of people, maybe a small team of teachers or leaders who are engaging on this. Then what would you notice? What might you pay attention to in a different way? And then you would come back together as a group and reflect on those insights, and maybe you would identify some areas for improvement. So we just wanted to introduce that linguistic landscape learning walk. And again, it's not the kind of thing where there's a particular right answer that you're looking for. And I'm just thinking about the question there about what's the right way of what languages we would expect to see. I think this is just a tool to guide your reflection and to provoke your thinking. And that would be a good discussion to have with the people who are doing this activity. Is this right what we're seeing? Is this something that we may need to improve or not? So that's the linguistic landscape learning walk. One other tool that I just wanted to briefly highlight, because I feel this is a very valuable one that's going to be useful for many of you. We've created a very detailed handbook, and actually we have two versions of this handbook. We have the version called the ML or Multilingual Learning Handbook, which is more holistic around the whole school provision for multilingual learners. And then we have an EAL handbook, which is specifically focused on English as an additional language. And for these handbooks are templates that are part of the deep dive, but could also be used separately from it. And there are these templates, you can download them, you can duplicate them, and you can add your own school name, you can add links to your own school policies, etc. And for each section of the framework, we have within the handbook sentence starters and paragraph frames that you can use to build out your own school handbook that outlines everything that you're doing on all of these levels and that's a document that you could then share amongst your school community for new teachers who are coming in, for example, to onboard them and get them familiar with your school's processes. So this is another tool that we've got that you can use as part of the deep dive, or also could use separately as to complement or go along with your school's language policy and the other documentation that you have, to bring all that into one place as a really useful handbook that is aligned to the MLRC School Improvement Framework. So that's the step 3, the deep dive, and I've introduced a number of activities. We looked at the linguistic landscape learning walk, and then we've also briefly touched on the handbooks. So we pause there and I'll hand over to Esther for any thoughts or reflections or questions about the step 3 deep dive.
Terrific. Thank you, Jake. And so many terrific comments in the chat as people think about what they might see if they engaged in the linguistic landscape learning walk. I just wanted to highlight a question that came up again about this idea of who to include and really the importance of different perspectives. You may think about adapting the learning walk to a student version of it, or someone mentioned the idea of parents being involved as well, because we know different people are going to see different things as they walk around, and how does that reflect or not reflect your school's values around language. So thank you. So many great questions. I'll try and see if we can capture some of these, but we also know that there are some of our members here who have been actively engaging with either the MLs or the EAL handbook. And so I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but if there's anyone here that would like to share about that kind of hands-on experience of using one of the handbooks, feel free either in the chat or to unmute yourself. And I'm just keeping track here of, we still have lots coming in to the chat, which is great. One of the questions that we see here is, how do we reconcile the goal of fostering multilingual identities with a policy that prioritizes English as the common language, especially when that policy can make other languages invisible in the school space? Thank you so much for that question, Uj. And I think this is really what kind of the linguistic landscape tool can bring to the surface, is what do we see reflected or not reflected? And you saw, as Jake pointed out, one of the questions in the learning walk is actually about language policy. And as John pointed out, this is one of the real focus areas for our MLRC language policy working group. So again, if you're interested, please let us know in the chat and we will send you the information. But that real tension that exists of how do we both promote and value multilingualism while also recognizing the role that instructional languages play at our school and what that means for social languages as well. So really these tools are to bring to the surface these conversations at your school. And then we also have opportunities like the Language Policy Working Group to really dig in as a community across the school network to some of these questions together. So thank you for that question.
Thanks, Esther. And I know we've got one more section to get to. I just wanted to add, if you're not familiar with the work that Ashley Falkenberry is doing at the American International School, Guangzhou, check her out on LinkedIn. They've been doing linguistic landscape walks with educational assistants, and it's a great way to empower members of your community to both learn about and gather data and evidence as part of this process. So we're ready to take a look at step 4.
Yeah, before we do that, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points that were mentioned there. I think that the question that was asked about, balancing celebration and value of multilingualism with instructional language, I think that shows the complexity of some of the challenges and the questions that we're thinking about and working on in our school and trying to navigate. And these tools are here to support with that. So you would be able to go to the framework and see what the research says in those research connections, look at those indicators, what's the best practice, what's happening in your school, and how can we identify our next steps. So these tools are here to help you in that navigating the complexities of some of these issues that we're working on in our school, and the opportunities as well. And I like the suggestion about getting parents involved, and we've suggested that in a number of the activities. When we suggest who the participants could be, we've suggested parents, students, or anyone else within your community who you would like to involve. I think the more different voices that you have, sharing their thoughts and perspectives, the better your works on the improvement is going to be. So let's move on to our last section. This is called the action plan. So by now you've become familiar with the framework, you've gone through the inventory, you've maybe done some of the deep dive activities, and you've got a good idea, hopefully, about some areas that could be improved and some projects you want to prioritize working on within your school. So what we've done in these tools, we've got some tools, the first two, the diamond ranking prioritization activity and the effort impact prioritization. These are tools for you to help prioritize what action steps you might want to take, because you may come out of this inventory process having loads of ideas about what you need to improve. And then we need to be strategic about identifying which ones we're going to work on first, which ones we're going to prioritize for our immediate action, etc. So those tools are there to help you as your team or your school community identify which areas to prioritize and work on. And then the 4C, we have an action planner, which is a kind of template that you can use to plan out your next steps, who's responsible, the timelines, etc. Just want to briefly focus on activity 4B. the effort and impact prioritization, just to give you a taste of that one. And I said we were going to use the Mentimeter again, but due to time, I'm going to skip that and I'm just going to show you what it would look like. So I'm just imagining here, imagining your school, you've gone through the inventory and you've done some deep dive, and then you've identified here, just in this example, these are just examples of 6 kind of next steps that you might identify. These are possible things you could do in your school. You might I realize that you need to make your language policy more inclusive. You may feel that there's need for more multilingual learning training for teachers. Maybe you feel like you need to employ more EAL specialists, home instruction, home language instruction, etc. These are just examples. These haven't come from the framework. These are things that school may decide. These are some possible next steps we could take. And then what you could do with this tool is then you would rank them. Which of these are going to have the highest impact, and which of these are going to require the most effort, and then you can identify, oh, here's something that's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of investment, but maybe won't have that big an impact. That's not an action that we're going to prioritize for the next school year. And then you can identify that these are maybe the actions that are going to have a big impact for not so much effort and investment, and these are the ones we're going to prioritize in the next step while we work on planning out how we're going to do those other actions that take more effort, for example. So this is just an example of one of the tools that we have here to help you prioritize an action plan around your next steps. And that's what the section 4 action plan is all about. So I'll hand back to, I've forgotten whose turn it was, John or Esther.
I think John, but either one of us is fine.
Thank you, Jake. And again, just want to reiterate, Jake has been a central thought partner in developing a lot of these tools and helping them pass the test of will they actually work and are they useful in schools. So just so grateful to you, Jake, for helping to contextualize the work we've been doing on the framework to make it really useful. And those of you on the call today can see how these tools are really teacher friendly, but also very powerful for you as teacher leaders to use in your school. So we've had a number of other questions come up in the chat. Happy to answer those. And please, if you have questions about this step 4, what are you going to do? We would love to hear those as well. And if you haven't been able to keep up with the chat, Esther, thank you for responding to a lot of these. Folks have asked about multiple languages and how to represent those through the learning walk, and to ensure that all languages in your community are known, honored, valued, represented, and some creative ways to think about that. And again, many of the whole school language policy questions relate to the work that the Language Policy Working Group has done. Another question that came up is, are these tools available only for members? And fortunately, many of you are members on this call. And yes, we're trying to create a community that both learns from each other and supports one another. And also, we have invested a lot in developing these tools. And so we want to make them available to member schools. And they're in the hub. Jake showed you where they are. If your school is not yet a member school, we will have some information when we wrap up about joining the MLRC. We'd love to welcome you as a new member school. Esther, what else have we missed from the chat?
Thanks, John. So a couple of questions or comments have just come in. Ashley asking about an example of an action plan. So thank you, Ashley, for that question. As these tools are brand new, they've just been released in the hub this semester. We don't yet have kind of a lot of examples across all of the tools of how people are using them. But one of the things that we're currently doing, and some of you have participated in this, is sending a survey to members who we know are engaged in using these tools and asking about how they're using them, if they have examples of what they have created. And the intention is, as more members are using these various tools, then we can share back with the community, obviously with members' permission, but we can share back with the community how people are using them. So that is kind of a new phase of development that we're in, asking how people are using them, using that feedback to improve the tools, and then also to be able to share out with the community some of the examples of how they're being used. So thank you, Ashley, for that question.
And David had a question about funding, which of course is a really important one. Couple quick answers. So yes, I think doing these activities takes time. It's also a really valuable investment in professional learning for you and your colleagues. And so to propose this to your leadership team to say you'd like funding, whether it's a release day or pizza for an after-school meeting, for teams to engage in this work is, I think, a really valuable investment. And to be able to say, here's the specific tools and tasks we're going to engage in. On the flip side, once you engage in these tasks, particularly the inventory, you have evidence that you've gathered to make recommendations for changes that then might require investment from your school. And rather than just making a suggestion or sharing a solution, you're able to back it up, that sort of advocacy with the inquiry and the evidence that you've gathered, which I think makes a strong case for some of the changes that your school might invest in to promote the success of all students. I know we need to wrap up. We've got about 5 minutes left, and we have some wonderful questions. We hope you'll continue to ask them by emailing us, connecting with us on LinkedIn, and just wanted to zoom back out. Again, Jake did a really great job detailing the 4 levels, the 4 steps in the playbook. And again, this is a derivative tool we've based on the framework that we introduced last week at the webinar. So the playbook is a set of tools and activities for your self-study. We've talked about the inventory, the handbook templates. We created these to help you do your work better and help you build capacity for improving outcomes for multilingual learners. Again, we've tried to work closely with accreditation agencies to recognize you're doing this work already. They should know about it, and they really support the deep dive and the tools. And then we would welcome the opportunity to partner with you. If your school would like the MLRC to get alongside you in gathering evidence, in gathering additional external evidence through surveys, through observations that we might do focus groups, and then to share a report back with you with your evidence and our feedback, then please let us know if you'd like to engage to partner with us for both comprehensive review that we might visit your school and do a program audit, or an online review where we would guide you and coach you in working through these tools. If you're, again, we focused on improvement. We also provide access, and we would love to see you at a research symposium to engage in action research. If you are a current member, here's what you can do. You can explore the network hub. If you don't have a hub account, make sure you get one created. You have a site coordinator at your school. Contact us if you need to know who that person is. Partner with us for school improvement. Let us know. We could do a guided review or an on-site comprehensive review. We would love to do that. You can also send a team to a research symposium. And if you're engaged in this work, and a number of you have said you're excited to share what you're doing, write or present with us at conferences. And that's the best way to share your story. If you're not yet a member, become a member. It takes 5 minutes to fill out the application. The annual fee is based on school size, and we try to make that really accessible for all different size schools. That'll give you access to the hub resources, those asynchronous courses, the language policy working group, and you'll be part of this really vibrant global community that's up late at night, early in the morning to talk about how do we improve schools for multilingual learners. And we would love to welcome your school as part of that community. So thank you again, Jake, for your presentation today, for your involvement in developing these tools. And we couldn't do it without folks like you who are both willing to do the work, but also to be generous thought partners in helping to develop the work. So big shout out to Jake for your role in all this. You can see these are powerful tools that are going to affect classrooms around the world. And Esther, give you the last word as folks say farewell and share in the chat.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. And our chat was very active today, which we love. We love to see that engagement in the questions. But if we missed a question you had or a comment, we had a lot of requests to join the Language Policy Working Group. If we missed any of those, please email us, and the email will be dropped in the chat. It's also obviously here, or you can use the QR code to send us a message through our website. But we want to make sure we can answer your questions, get you the information you need. I know we had some people asking about membership, how to become a member, how we can process your membership quickly. So please just reach out by email and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So thank you again for being here with us today, and we look forward to seeing you soon.